Thanks for coming back. You were on the program when?
December, a couple years ago.
A couple of years ago. And, then if I knew that this show was going to become such a huge success, I would have been much nicer to you.
Yeah. You had no idea who I was. Yeah.
Now, I understand your father's name is actually Homer.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, and that's the father's name on the little show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is that a problem for your dad?
I can't talk about it until the lawsuits are over.
This is indeed a disturbing universe.
Hello and welcome back. So we've finally made it to the premiere of Season 2, which is called Bart Gets an F. It was the 14th episode of the series. It was episode number 7F03, and it aired on October 11th, 1990. It's the first episode written by David M. Stern, brother of the actor Daniel Stern. It was directed by David Silverman, and the showrunners for Season 2 were Matt Groening, James L. Brooks, and Sam Simon. And with the premiere of Season 2, we also get an upgraded version of the opening theme. And it's been said that Bart Gets an F is sort of a sequel to Bart the Genius. And while I would agree that it is very similar to Bart the Genius, episodes from Season 1 just don't hold up like those from Season 2. So if Bart the Genius was sort of an introduction to Season 1, then Bart Gets an F shows just how far they've come since then. Because this one is way better than anything from Season 1, and that includes the writing and the animation. Now that all the writers and directors have seen what's possible, the overall quality of the show had a very drastic improvement that's easily noticed in the first few seconds of the episode. And when you look at all the episodes contained in Season 2, I'd actually call this one mediocre in comparison. But I'm definitely not saying you should skip it. Bart Gets an F is easily better than all 13 episodes that came before it. Gone are the days of the terrible writing and the horrible animation that you would sometimes see throughout the first season. From here on out, the quality just keeps getting better. For several seasons anyway. Before things started going downhill. And these are just my opinions as someone who grew up watching these as they originally aired on Fox. When this show came on, it was immediately considered the best episode of The Simpsons ever. It suddenly felt like the show was on steroids. Compared to the first season, it was mind-blowing. And the show was never able to replicate the viewer share that it received that night. It still holds the record for the highest amount of viewers for a single Simpsons episode. I would guess it was the first episode for a lot of people. And perhaps some of those people never returned. But I certainly think they found their core audience with the airing of this episode. But that's enough for me for now. Let's see what the producers of the show have to say about it.
Welcome to Season 2 of The Simpsons. I'm Al Jean.
Now this is the new and improved titled sequence, slightly improved, or basically slightly shortened. So this is a new section here with characters who were introduced up to the end of the last season, really. Right here is a bunch of people I just threw in for you to look at freeze frame.
Yeah, The Simpsons has been called the first VCR show. I mean, people were really just getting VCRs and just getting comfortable with them, so...
To catch a fish, to kill a bull, to make love to a woman.
Historical note on this show, the series had been moved from Sunday nights, where it started, to Thursday nights. And this was the first new episode that aired on Thursday night. It was up against The Cosby Show, which was the #1 show at the time. And there was a lot of publicity as, would Bart beat Bill? Would Bill beat Bart?
It was a huge story, and I remember when they announced it at the Fox affiliates meeting, saying The Simpsons has been moved to Thursday at 8 o'clock, and everyone knew what that meant. And apparently there was a stunned silence and then giant applause. And a part of it, I think we all felt a little guilt, on top of it feeling a little No! It was just sort of wrong, because The Cosby Show was not only a hit, it was a quality show. We always felt we were a good show, and that was a good show. It was hip, and, we wish we had taken on a piece of garbage instead of The Cosby Show.
To live. I thank you. 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, and 5 being average, I give this book a 9.
Well, I remember when because Jim and I were at the affiliates meeting, and we found out about it, that they were thinking about it the night before. We got a call from Barry Diller, and of course we were very, very much against it, and I didn't realize how much against it you could be until I saw Jim really make the argument that the show which was in the top 10 when it was on Sunday night, was going to get would be devastated by going up against Cosby. And they did announce it in the spring for the fall premiere, which was October 11th, 1990. So all that summer, it was increasing fake news stories about this supposed rivalry between Bart Simpson and Bill Cosby. In fact, Cosby was on the cover of Entertainment Weekly wearing a Bart Simpson T-shirt. So he got into it too, and it was a big drag because I think it hurt both shows.
Any questions? No? Then I'll just sit down.
Bart, did you read the book? Are you aware that there is a major exam tomorrow on colonial America?
Yes, ma'am.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yes, ma'am.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yes, ma'am. Whoa! Take that, Granny! Oh, hide in the closet! Oh no, deadly mothballs! Ooh, Granny's kissing me!
You have reached the level of ungrateful grandchild. Try again if you dare.
So back in 1990, this joke was so absurd, it was hilarious because of how absurd it was. But this joke is a little hard to laugh at now. What with all the grandmas who get murdered just for fun these days.
It certainly, I'll say, after this episode aired, I think when the initial ratings came in, we had several million more viewers than Bill Cosby, and then it was the headline of the New York Post the next day. Bart beats the Cos, a big picture of Bart's face on the cover. And then, of course, when the final ratings came in, Cos beat the Bart. He actually did much better, and I think continued to beat us week after week.
We didn't actually beat him in the final ratings until 1992 during the Winter Olympics.
But it was funny. I think it was a dumb move overall. But Fox never really established any kind of strong ratings on Thursday night. It did knock our show from being in the top 10 down into the 50s. I think we were ranked in the 50s week after week, and we held our own, and it did well enough. But there's no telling how huge the show would have been if they had just left us there where people knew where the show was.
It might have run 50 years.
And in fact, that's it. After I don't know how many years on Thursday night, they finally put us right back where we were Sunday at 8 o'clock, and the ratings shot up again.
Just a couple more games and I'll hit the books. Soup's on! Hurry up, or we'll get that icky skin on the top.
I hate that icky soup skin.
So I didn't mention this during the opening couch gag, but this episode is the first one that features the sailboat painting, which has been hanging on the wall behind the couch ever since.
Oh, what a glorious day!
Bill Cosby, he was one of the few people who would knock the show. I think he called him the stupidest thing on television once.
Well, he said a lot of stuff.
We did throw him out
He
of
also
work.
said some nice things, too.
Okay.
Well, enough complaining.
This is what writers sit around and talk about.
Going back a little bit, Dan had that great reading of "Oh, What a Glorious Day," and I wanted that upshot because it's such a nice, powerful reading he did.
Hey, you know what I'm noticing about this episode is look at that. Look at the lighting and the pose on that and the acting. This is great.
It was really fun. I mean, the beginning of the second season, I think in the animation side, we started coming into our own, and all of us as directors got more experienced, and the artist had gotten used to drawing the characters, which was a big problem the first season, I think. And things were improving with the animators here and overseas, and we just got more specific about the performances and the acting.
It's so unfair, just because he's different.
Their destination was...
Yeah, one thing you often hear about the look of the show is, if you look at the first season, you can tell it's different from current shows. But I actually feel the look was well established by the second season, and you really can't tell shows from that season apart from shows we do right now.
That past shot with Bart floating looked as lovely and as sort of textural as anything we do on the show. It looked great.
As I said earlier, the show has come a long way in both the writing and the animation. But I can immediately tell the difference between Season 2 and Season 5. For me, the dead giveaway is Homer's hair. In Season 2, it doesn't have that sharp zigzag quality to it. Instead, it's a little more rounded. I'm not exactly sure which season they eradicated that, but I think you see it most often in the episodes that come from season 2.
You're gonna miss your bus. Uh-oh.
That looks like a David Silverman drawing.
Well, it was. Thank you. It's sort of the influence, though, from things like Chuck Jones and Friz Freeling and that sort of timing of like somebody not moving and then suddenly their eye moving or just their eyeball moving. It's a lot of great fun, I think, also with the way this episode was written. There's a lot of good development, kind of slowly developing that Bart's going to go in this direction and it's going to blow up in his face. And it's just great, a lot of good material to work with.
Think, Simpson, think. Crisis brings out the best in you.
It was also the premiere because, Bart was so popular. We wanted to premiere with a Bart show. And David did a great job directing it.
Yeah, I see it's 7F03. I was wondering what the first...
The first that year recorded was The Three-Eyed Fish.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which was a really good show, but it wasn't featuring Bart. And there was a discussion about which one would be best to air first. And since it was Bart, we did this one.
And the second one was the Hair Tonic show, I think.
Right.
Which featured Homer. So.
Yeah, it's funny. At the time, Bart was clearly the big star. And, you could either say Homer's the star now or it's an ensemble. But it was amazing the publicity this show was getting at that point.
What is it, Bart?
Nothing. Must take test.
What's the matter, son?
Hey, did you notice that school nurse was putting tongue depressors back in the jar that she spilled on the floor? That was sort of an unacknowledged joke.
I think it was a gag we threw in the storyboard because we had a note from somebody saying, "What is she doing?"
Do you feel the shooting pain in your arm?
Both arms, ma'am.
Temporary loss of vision?
Who said that?
Is there anything else I can get you?
Perhaps the TV?
So we're still having problems with pupil size, I noticed. They're varying from scene to scene.
Yeah, it was one thing we're still working on.
I wish I had more, you phlebitis.
Now, this is something, the fact that The Simpsons in this season only have one television that has to be moved from upstairs to downstairs, because now I believe they have a TV in every room in the house.
Well, Fox finally loosened the purse strings.
I remember the Logic Police would be all over us early on, where we wanted a TV in Bart's room, and someone would say for a long time, "Oh, there's only one TV in the house," and we finally let that slide.
Everyone knows you're faking it, Bart. Well, everyone better keep their mouth shut.
Is Bart left-handed?
Yes.
Okay. Great sound effect.
This isn't her first appearance, but this is Marcia Wallace as Mrs. Krabappel, Bart's teacher, one of the more popular characters we have on this show.
Bart is an underachiever, and yet he seems to be, how should I put this, proud of it?
It's interesting, too. There was a subtext at this time where the underachiever T-shirt was very popular, and, this was a show about whether Bart's going to do well in school and that he actually did buckle down to get the grade he gets at the end.
We asked questions, and was this show done as a reaction against it? It was like, no, it just seemed like a good idea for an episode. It wasn't built as a reaction against anything.
We never do anything for a reason. It just kind of falls in that way.
Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah.
55, 42, 26, a 12 on state capitol.
Now, the previous thing where Bart is like getting all excited, I purposely wanted to cut from different angles very quickly just to give his anxiety the feeling of that everything is collapsing around him.
Okay. Why are we dancing around the obvious? I know it, you know it, I am dumb, okay? Dumb as a post.
Yeah, I'm afraid my recommendation is for Bart Simpson to repeat the 4th grade.
And this is Harry doing Lauren Pryor, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He appeared in like about 3 or 4 episodes.
He's one of those season 1 people who was always holding us to get back in the show.
Dr. Pryor, I think John Vitti named him. And people always ask about the names on the show, and they come from all different sources. But he was Dr. Pryor because he pries into things. That's about the level of anecdote that goes with naming the Simpsons characters.
Well, the Simpsons are the Simpsons because they're simpletons.
Hey.
Oh, what? Now it can be told.
A lot of things are, it's only because the question comes up a lot. A lot of things, people get their names for several reasons. Homer Simpson is Homer, he's your dad, but Homer Simpson's also the character in Day of the Locust.
Yep.
And they're simple people.
In the film Day of the Locust, the character named Homer Simpson was played by Donald Sutherland.
Simpson. Homer Simpson.
As God is my witness, I can pass the 4th grade.
The color of Bart's shirt seems a little off in this episode.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the color of Bart's shirt in this episode, but I think it's the only one that has this problem.
And if you don't, at least you'll be bigger than the other kids.
A lot of odd-looking kids.
Yeah, at the very beginning, we thought it would be funny to have very odd-looking kids, and now background characters we try to make as generic as possible so they're not distracting. And there's some really freakish.
I think Wendell is pale because he initially was a kid that always threw up on the bus,
Right.
and so it still retained that coloring. He's a much lighter yellow than the rest.
Yeah, he was going off nauseous, I noticed in this. It's actually stolen from another episode, I think, that shot.
What was the pirate's name in Treasure Island?
The dream sequence time.
Yes, and it's also the first time we get a flash forward of Bart's future, which we see a lot in subsequent episodes. And then later on, they got really serious about it and started doing full episodes that take place in the future. And I really enjoyed the first few of those. But as time went on and they made more and more of those futuristic episodes, they started to get a little tedious for me.
Will you quit bugging me about the stupid pirate? I'm unfamiliar with the rules of your sport.
Hi, this is Jim Brooks. I just got here.
Welcome aboard. We've been talking about the show, Jim, and about the move to Thursday night.
Okay, Sunday we did everything we could to stay on Sunday. It was the perfect family night, everything perfect, best spot in the world. All could have been ours if we stayed on Sunday, and then they, we felt like cannon fodder when they moved us against Cosby.
I need you to help me get a passing grade.
You know what's interesting about the move too, because this is a traditional network move. You have an established hit. They'll move the hip, up and coming, new hit show against it, and the new show always fails. This was moving Miami Vice up against Dallas, moving Mork and Mindy up against All in the Family. It's always a bonehead move, and I think it's a tribute to The Simpsons that it didn't kill us; it merely hobbled us.
Well, what also really hurt was they were a little late in picking up the show, so that we only had the original 13 to air all summer. We kept airing them again and again, and people were saying that they were getting a little tired of the show, that they thought we had production problems. And since then, we never have. We've always delivered plenty of episodes on time.
But I remember going against Cosby, and we did take a hit. I mean, I think we were a top 10 show on Sunday, weren't we?
We were number 3 at the peak.
Oh, my God, right. And then, so we went way down, but which was still great for Fox.
And then Jim's audio suddenly gets cut, which is something that happens pretty often in these commentaries. Someone will be talking about something, and then they mention Fox, and suddenly their audio cuts out. And the audio from the episode starts playing at full volume. And no one says anything for a few minutes. I'll try and point this out whenever I notice it, because it definitely sounded like Jim had more to say after that.
You know what I'm noticing about this is the fact that The Simpsons is one of the last shows that is fully painted on cells, including the backgrounds, which leads, you tell David, I mean, doesn't it lead to a thickness?
Well, we have a problem with what we call cell flares, where because of the thickness of the yellow causes a ring around in certain close-ups. And sometimes we call retake after retake, and we just can't get rid of them. And but on the other hand, it's still, there's a quality about it that I still like about having the cells. It just really fits on The Simpsons for some reason.
So I believe this audio commentary was recorded in 2002, which was the end of season 13 going into the beginning of season 14. And season 14 is when they made the switch to digital. So this commentary was most likely recorded during that transition.
That was I remember the early seasons, that was the number one problem, cell flare. And we'd see it scene after scene after scene, and we had to prioritize because we couldn't reshoot every scene that had it in it. So you do see it turn up, but what you probably see is a quarter of what was there originally.
One problem I've been told, since we're one of the last hand-painted shows now, is people who work in animation want to get into computer animation, and we're running out of people who can actually paint cells. We've gone from avant-garde to being like the last of the dinosaurs.
When we're doing this, we actually had a different model sheet for Martin after he goes sort of crazy for this scene here. Just so he's slightly different. His eyes are larger. His hair is a different design for this scene.
One interesting sidelight, the voice of Martin Prince is Russi Taylor, who also voices Minnie Mouse.
And her husband is Mickey Mouse. And the husband
you can
is
draw a picture.
Yeah.
They got married?
Yep.
Yeah. And especially... It's off the topic. This guy looks nothing like Mickey Mouse.
I heard Minnie Mouse was crazy.
I didn't say she was crazy. I said she was so goofy.
That's an old joke.
Oh, I know that joke.
I just need one more day to study, Lord. I need your help.
I wanted to do that move so you could see that Lisa was listening to what Bart was saying.
Prayer, the last refuge of a scoundrel.
I just like the way this came out. I thought it did a nice job. The shadow looked good. It worked out pretty well.
Tone feels different to me. I mean, the second season did have a very specific tone, I think.
Well, another, undertone was how the show was considered subversive and the president was against this, and yet it's one of the few shows where you show a character praying and God answering his prayer with a snowstorm.
Whoa, good morning, world!
I always say The Simpsons is not only religious, it's an Old Testament religious show. I mean, miracles happen constantly. God's vengeance is very cruel and completely out of proportion to the crimes committed.
I think we're safe to assume that Mike Reese has never read the New Testament.
Rise to time, participants. It's the Bill and Marty Show. He's Bill.
He's Marty.
Two grown men who can't get enough of each other. Springfield County Schools will be closed!
We are going to keep on trying to strengthen the American family to make American families a lot more like the Waltons and a lot less like the Simpsons.
Huh? Hey, we're just like the Waltons. We're praying for an end to the Depression, too.
On the topic of the president, too, this is about the time President Bush Sr. was ridiculing us, and, we made a lot of fun of him, never dreaming that his son would get into power. We'd all be in horrible trouble.
And yet The Simpsons never mustered the courage to even make fun of George W. Bush. Not even once in his 8 years in office. They're probably big fans of his now, just like all the other hypocrites who suddenly love George W. Bush, just because he isn't the orange guy, I guess.
I met Barbara Bush at this thing where there was a receiving line right after she had criticized us, and for some reason it occurred to me that she thought it was funny too, that she had blasted the show. This sort of dumb notion you have. And I did some kind of lighthearted remark, and she just looked at me like I was me.
Cowabunga!
Oh my gosh, he actually does say cowabunga. I thought that was just a t-shirt. I think that's the only time he's ever said it.
Oh, it's definitely not the only time he ever said it. Here's a clip from the video I made on the Telltale Head.
Boom, cowabunga!
And I think the important thing to note here is that Al Jean is in the room and listening to this conversation. But that won't stop him from claiming that Bart never said cowabunga in future commentaries.
And we may have taken it from the shirt. It's like, oh, all right, I guess this is what Bart says.
Yeah.
It says tumble dry.
I don't know who or what God is exactly. All I know is he's a force more powerful than Mom and Dad put together, and you owe him big.
You're right. How good could it be?
Now, coming up is one of the hardest scenes that I had to do in the show because it had to be snow day and it had to be the most amazing day possible. And I had to do this one long scene of just everything happening at once. And I'm happy it looks good and effortless, but I got to tell you, it was just amazingly miserable to work on. To time all this stuff and get all these characters working at the right time.
It doesn't look effortless. It looks like somebody really sweated bullets to me, man.
Well, good. That was the idea.
We see your pain.
I hereby declare this day to be Snow Day, the funnest day in the history of Springfield.
This is also the introduction of Mayor Quimby, but I forgot to put that he's in fact Mayor Diamond Joe Quimby. It just says Diamond Joe Quimby. So hopefully you figured it out. It's just Diamond Joe Quimby.
Yeah, early on, we think thought people wouldn't recognize the mayor without that seal or a sash that said mayor on him.
Obviously, this is a parody of The Grinch. I figured, well, as long as it's snowing and singing, you may as well do Dahu Dore type situations.
It was 2 days before the show aired. I said, we should stick Herman in there, our one-armed guy, because he has no one to hold hands with. And I think Sam Simon was going, let's do it. And he was going to pay for some quickie animation literally days before the show aired, but it just didn't seem practical.
Yeah, it's very hard to make changes in the show once it's back in color. Any reanimation is very expensive.
Could the delegates agree on recommendations that all Americans could support?
I like the color scheme in this, sort of starting from like just keeping it black and white, but little bits kind of red, white, and blue, and then variations on blues and reds.
Hey, look, everybody! John Hancock's writing his name in the snow!
My favorite joke.
We should do that more often. I like that muted color fantasy thing.
Yeah.
Did we do that in the, I think it's Bart was dreaming, he had to go to the bathroom. And that was the last time I think we used that technique.
I think we did it in the bowling show, wasn't the bowling fantasy?
Right, that's
muted?
the first time we tried that. And then I think they did Bart the Murderer, we did that as well.
Yeah, that muted color is like one of those Aztec gold techniques. It's lost to the age. Can't do it anymore.
Class is over.
Oh, snow seems to be gone.
This, of course, is just echoing what the same test composition is in the first act.
Well, Bart, it's a 59. That's another F.
This is also difficult, trying to make Bart cry and not making it too unpleasant to look at, so I don't know if I was successful. Hiding the face seemed to be the best thing to do in general.
There's a tendency when we call for crying in this script for the animation to come back with streams of tears springing off the face. So that's why I always say one tear.
Yeah, because it kind of looks like milk coming out of their heads as opposed to...
This is as much pure little boy as we've ever had him, I think.
Yeah.
As opposed to the corporate logo he's become.
Oh, now I know how George Washington felt when he surrendered Fort Necessity to the French in 1754.
What? You deserve an extra point on your exam. Hey, it's only fair.
You mean I passed?
Just barely.
So then Bart was barely able to pass the 4th grade. And yet for the past 35 years, that's where he has remained anyway.
I always think it's kind of a sad reflection on his intelligence that he studied really hard and he got a D-.
Yeah.
Like he really isn't that bright.
By the way, whenever you do a show, when The Simpsons does a show with snow in it or winter, people love it, like Mr. Plow. And you never see snow on television. It's
very few shows you actually see a sense of seasons, you know. And it's the only show that I've seen is The Simpsons, where you show summer and fall and winter.
Except they also have a desert and an ocean. It's very hard to figure quite where the weather's coming from.
So the Pacific Northwest is nearby and Mexico's nearby.
We're proud of you, boy.
Thanks, Dad. But part of this D- belongs to God.
God, every one of these people is dead.
It's sad, isn't it?
Well, dead to me.
Actually, what's interesting, if you look at the animation credits frame by frame, you'll see people who are now, directors and directors on other shows, and it's pretty amazing. You're looking like layout and background and cleanup even. It's like, oh, he's now directing The Simpsons or something else.
So after seeing Some Enchanted Evening, Fox reran those first 13 episodes over and over and over until everyone felt sick. By the time Bart Gets an F finally aired in October, I suppose I had just lost interest at that point because I hadn't seen anything new in so long. So when I finally saw this episode on a Thursday night instead of Sunday, the show looked so different to me I thought I must have missed a few episodes. At the time, I was amazed by how different it looked. But by the time the season 2 finale first aired, I realized this episode's actually pretty mediocre compared to the rest of season 2, and it doesn't compare well at all to episodes from subsequent seasons. But similar to season 1, this episode deserves to be graded on a curve, just because of how important it is, not only as far as the story goes, but also for the popularity of the show itself. I mean, this episode had extremely high ratings on the night that it premiered, and it probably introduced millions of people to The Simpsons for the first time. So as far as I'm concerned, the importance of this episode is just unquestionable. But I am ready to move on so that we can finally get to a Phil Hartman episode. But it's going to be just a little longer before that happens. Anyway, if you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. Next week we'll be doing Simpson and Delilah. I'll see you then.